And I think that through the buildings we have chosen, some of them are also sort of an infrastructural element. They represent the greatness and the strength of the US throughout the history of the country.
That's a little cool detail.
Awesome architect, not so awesome to marry. Not a husband material.
Exactly.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Louis and George podcast.
I'm Louis.
I'm George. Cheers, man.
Cheers. Welcome to a new one. So, today we're doing an architecture podcast. We are going to talk about architecture. In particularly, we're going to talk about our 10 favorite buildings from an architect's perspective in the US. We have a list of our top 10 buildings. We have chosen buildings that have an iconic representation, but also buildings that are maybe not so known to the more touristically focused visitors, let's say. And we will put also a couple of honorable mentions. Now, one thing important to say is that from this list, we're skipping buildings that are very focused into neoclassic style, like the Capitol, for example, or the Abraham Lincoln Memorial, because I do believe that when it comes to older style classical buildings, Europe tends to do it a bit better because it's more the original in the matter. Whereas the US, I like more modern stuff, 18th century, 19th century, those times.
Yeah, I want to just say that when you say neoclassic, it sounds super douchey and stuff like that. People may be already thinking, what is this douche shit of podcast? The cool stuff that are connected to architecture is that many people maybe don't take so much attention that architecture is sort of a time record of a society, of an economic situation, of the local culture, because the different eras we have lived in, they leave different marks. Whether if the economy was good or bad, the building is going to have a higher or lower quality materials. The styles is sort of impregnated in the culture of that time. And I think that through the buildings we have chosen, some of them are also sort of an infrastructural sort of element. They represent the greatness and the strength of the US throughout the history of the country. And some of them have been completely revolutionary for the whole world. And they have also a little bit of a Europe in themselves because, of course, nobody is really American. Everybody comes from somewhere. So some of the people involved into designing or constructing the different buildings were from Europe. So
exactly. People change, but buildings stay there the same until at some point they're demolished. But generally, it's a small reference to the past of what was over there, since the building stays sort of the same from the moment it was built. So, we're going to start from the bottom of the list. And the first one we're going to do is kind of a cheat, because it's not really a building per se, it's a system. Now, this system is called the Guastavino Tile Vault. This is a system made of tiles which was used in a geometrical form to create a vault. You see this in New York City in several spots. For example, in the City Hall station, in the Grand Central Oyster Bar, the really cool oyster bar in New York City, or in the Market Under the Bridge, it's called. And you see these really cool ceilings, wide vaults made with these tiles. These tiles are put in a way that the geometry works in compression, and this compression creates a self-sustaining system. Now, this dude is a guy from Spain, and he implemented something called the Bóveda Catalana, the Catalan-styled vault. He Americanized it, made it with a different geometry, and created these systems in New York. This is a guy from the 1880s, 1890s. He immigrated to the US and implemented this system. Now, this is not a building per se. It's more of a system that you see in different spots of the city if you know where to look. In the end, Spanish dude going to the US, creating a system. I should say, immigrants, we get the job done.
Is the joints of these tiles dry, or is it still with some sort of concrete that sticks the things together? or it's just like putting them in a way together that they put pressure on each other and they stay stable?
They work together as a stable system. It's similar to when you think about a Roman arch, that the pieces are in contact with each other. There is some mortar to glue them together, but it's more about the geometry. It's a geometry the same way an arch, the compression of the arch creates compression on the stones, which transmits the load. This creates a self-sustaining system, self-bearing system. This is similar, but with tiles. And it creates really cool spaces. It's a thing that you will not find it in, again, one building per se, but different references around the city.
Oh, this was exactly what I was saying, that architecture is also the mark of the different cultures. And with this Guastavino system, you can spot where Spanish culture was integrated within the city of New York. Also, I have to say, as a person that has been educated also in the Mediterranean area of Europe, I have to say that the Spanish architects still now they are spot on the best in my opinion, in the Mediterranean area. Maybe Portuguese are also quite good, but they have their own sort of school of thought, let's say. And the aesthetics I saw of these Guastavino tiles is also very beautiful because they're left without any fluster. They're just visible. And also when I was in Barcelona, you can see those little vaults on the ceiling sometimes that are left like this visible. It's super nice.
Yeah, in cafes and places. It's called the Catalan vault, Bóveda Catalana. And this is an Americanized version, I would call it. You would say it's a bigger wide span. Of course, the US, everything's bigger. And they made it work really, really well.
And this was, again, right. When did you say? The 18th?
The late 1800s. I think 1885 is when they started implementing this system. So from the late 1800s, early 1900s, there's little references of these buildings still there. Not many, because New York is an ever-growing, ever-changing city. But the buildings sort of stay the same. We have a couple New York buildings.
How did you discover it? Is it famous in Spain or...?
We know about it from university, but mostly reading. There's several books about buildings in New York, buildings that tell you this story. Books that tell you stories of buildings. And I was researching some New York buildings. Most of this book is more about fun stories of different buildings in New York. Some of them are quite crazy. Like there's the old captain's house in New York. And from the outside, you see just an old style house, but there's a record. And you see that this house was built in the late 1700s, belonged to a Dutch captain. Then, a few decades later, he dies, the house moves, then there's other owners. Then it becomes a place where people made dogfights, illegal crap in that house, like in the early 1800s. There was some kind of depression in that time. It becomes a whorehouse later, this house. So all of these houses that are so old, they have a lot of stories written in them. And there's records where you can follow up. There's this book about the history of buildings in New York. And you see a lot of these amazing stories. One is this example of the system of Guastavino.
I have one book that I bought from New York, The Power Broker, which is about this guy who was basically ruling the city from the 30s, 40s till the 60s, 70s. I don't remember his name, but this guy was a politician guy that moved a lot of money, a lot of things. And it's super interesting to see how they developed these super big infrastructures and stuff. So there were these people that really moved the needle forward. But when we did the list, I didn't focus on putting some Italian architects that did some great stuff in New York. Because Renzo Piano did the New York Times building. Yeah. He did the new... what is it called? Something. The museum about black culture in New York. And also there is this one thing I discovered while researching, but I didn't put it in the list. Then we move on the next building. But I want to mention there is because we have a couple of bridges. I'm gonna spoiler a little bit. So I was looking this documentary about the bridges of New York. There's this bridge, Washington Bridge, which is the longest one, I think. And it ends in one bus station, which is a big, you have to imagine a big bus station made by this Italian engineer called Pierluigi Nervi, which architects were used to call architect, although he was an engineer. And they did it because his structures are so beautiful. So they look often like he did vaults that look like flowers from the inside. Or itself, this bus station, if people...
Damn, we gotta look it up. Yeah.
It looks super pretty. It looks like these wings that are opening like a butterfly and stuff. So all the architects, although he was an engineer, they called him architect, because he was a cool guy.
100 years ago, it was all architects. There was not the concept of that.
Now, this was in the 60s, 70s. He did several stadiums. No, maybe he was a little early. I think he was probably from the 30s to the 60s, 70s. But he did several stuff, and he was used to build these super beautiful concrete structures that just the shape, the structural shape itself was very beautiful.
Italians know their thing from the Romans until now. Let's do the next one.
The next one,
the next one, number 9 on the list, would be Frank Lloyd Wright's Guggenheim Museum in New York, next to Central Park. Now, I gotta be careful here and start with a full disclosure. I'm a huge Frank Lloyd Wright fanboy. So whenever I talk Frank Lloyd Wright, tears might come out. I think that dude was one of the greatest ever. I'm not gay, but I would blow Frank Lloyd Wright. So
the old Frank,
good old Frank. Apparently, he had many wives also around. He was having his fun as well.
God damn! These architects of the past were real players, not like the today's poor bastards. The today architects just coping.
They were total bosses. But yeah, Guggenheim of New York. Now this building, it's awesome. First of all, white concrete. It's one of the first buildings done with white concrete, which is a pretty modern concept when it's done. If you look at it right now, it looks like a, let's say, modern style building. But if you look at pictures from when it was built, I think it's the 20s, I think it was. It's amazing because you could see the cars of the time next to that building. And the building looks like it comes from the future because those cars look nothing like any car that we have right now. The geometry of this building, how it connects with the park, how it connects with the buildings around it. To me, it's one of the biggest icons in New York. I can't wait to visit it, but I can't wait to go again and visit it.
I was super unlucky because when I went to New York, it was closed for setting up the next exhibition. So I could enter only in the atrium and see like the big atrium. One thing that has to mention is that in that period, they had this sort of attraction for this futuristic way of building stuff because it was shortly after the Industrial Revolution, so people were extremely excited about machines. It was basically the opposite spirit of today. Today, now we have this ecologist obsession.
Nature first,
yeah, and they were like, "Fuck it! Now we finally have machines. Finally, can really this sped up so much the development of society and of the industry and of the economy." And what is fascinating, what probably people might underestimate when you see the building nowadays, because maybe it doesn't look so complicated, they didn't have any computers or any digital tools to design. They had to design by hand.
Exactly.
And designing that spiral, it's super complicated.
This has been done by a dude with a pen. That's it. And building it itself after, like, guys, I'm guessing pouring concrete, checking how it's done, going almost every day. Like nowadays, when you have to visit the construction site, you don't really have to go every day because systems are standardized. So you can apply a system in different parts of the building. And only when you find connection points, elements that are not so obvious, you have to visit the construction site more often. Otherwise, you can stay in the office and coordinate from there very often. With this kind of building, this kind of geometry, I can imagine the architect going there every day, every hour, that they make the right curve, the right form. The building works with the street, that the flow of people on the street can feel invited to enter into the building. It feels like the protection of a shelter. And, New York in winter can be a harsh place. Awesome place, 1920s. Nowadays, it looks more of a modern-ish building, but you have to see it in the time where it was made. It would look completely astonishing, alien to the place.
I have to correct you because it's a little bit later in the 1960s that they made it. 3 years of construction. Also financed by the Guggenheim family, which is this super fucking rich family involved into mining, and they have this sort of foundation, and they have built afterwards several Guggenheim museums around the world. There is one in Venice. There is the latest one. I think it's in Abu Dhabi, or I'm not sure if it's a Guggenheim or a Louvre, but they're fucking...
Yes. They have one in Bilbao. We might reference it later in Spain, which is a
that's
game
true.
changer.
Yeah, that's a game changer.
It's a big deal. I thought it was earlier, but okay, 1960s. It is.
Oh, the internet says so. Cannot be right. Cannot be wrong in case of the... But Frank Lloyd Wright, for sure, one of the biggest geniuses of the 20th century. He was a complete star back in the days, did several revolutionary things, changed a little bit the point of view. And I think that going through this list for me also was super interesting to notice how many great architects have been in America in the last century. And now it's a little bit, they don't have these figures of influence in the world of architecture. They have this huge corporation like SOM, KPF, Studio Gang, all these huge ass offices that are the biggest in the world, because America is basically based on the big corporation, and architecture is not different. There's this huge corporation with thousands of architects work at. But I miss a little bit one figure, one
star.
reference.
Yeah, I agree. And Frank, I say Frank like he was my buddy, And that guy, he was the man. Very troubled guy. Traveled, like traveling, not troubled. Which I think it could be also one of the keys why his style was a bit different. The guy lived in Japan for a while, which, nowadays to go and live in Japan, it may seem more, let's say, on quotes, normal. But 100 years ago, it was even more rare to go.
Accessible, rather. Like now it's accessible. Like if this is your goal, you can definitely do it, and you can fly. Back in the days, they would hop on a ship and...
Exactly. So he has this influence, which you see, it could be one of the sources why his style is a bit different, because he's influenced by the culture of another country. He has a lot of houses throughout the US and a lot of buildings. But yeah, my dude, Frank Lloyd Wright, even his windows that he designs in the Guggenheim and in other buildings like the Rohe house, there's actually jewelry made based on these windows where it's sort of the shape of the window but scaled down to the size of an earring that you can put in your ear. And there's Frank Lloyd Wright windows in the shape of earrings and this kind of stuff. And it even works now.
Yeah, and also in the back in the days, now this is starting to become a little bit of a critical point towards current situation in architecture, is that all these people, despite being the designers, they were also sort of artisans, and they would invest so much time into designing a single detail, a single particular form that was meant exactly for that building, and then other artisans will construct these windows by hand in the exact shape it was needed by the architect to achieve his goal. And also the clients wanted that. Nowadays, I think that both architects have started following a little bit the standardization of the softwares we use.
For sure.
And also the clients, because they want, this company makes the standard windows, use the standard windows, put them there, and we're good to go. And meanwhile, back in the days, there was exactly this feeling of the architect, but especially the client, because the client is the one who gives the money, wanted to leave a mark, a heritage. Mm-hmm. And after hundreds of years, there are these iconic buildings, and everybody remembers both the designer and the commissioner.
Exactly. Now it's more profit focused. So yeah, what are you going to do? This still happens, but very rarely. Like every now and then you get a museum or an opera house here and there where they actually went all in. Mm-hmm. We could do at some point top 10 German buildings or European buildings, but that's for another day. Not today.
Yeah, we would need to do each country because here the culture is so different. Nowadays, maybe the Saudi Arabia world is trying to do something similar, but in my opinion, is nothing comparable to the great buildings of the 20th century that were made throughout America with the sensitivity, the style, the quality. Super nice.
Don't get me started with the Dubai, Saudi story. We'll do it one day.
The line.
We'll get cancelled the next day.
The line. And, I'm rather afraid Saudi agents going to look for us to kill us.
Yes, I will be hanged after. But So let's move to the next one. We're going to a more modern styled one with a more modern way of thinking and designing. Number 8, it is, yes, the Seattle Public Library. The architecture group is called OMA. It's a Dutch group. The main architect is Rem Koolhaas. He's kind of a character. He's known in the architecture circles. And this is a completely modern building. It's done in a very different style. This building, cool thing about it is that you can see that the architects have thought about the building not so much in floor plan form, but in section form. So the experience of the visitor can be lived directly through the plans. Because if you think about it, when you're walking into a building, you're not looking at the floor. The floor plan exposition is not the experience of the visitor. When you think and design looking at the section, you have the experience of the visitor or the person going in there. It's a really cool thing. OMA is very characteristic for being a data-focused studio. It's a more modern style of thinking, not so much the fascinating architect that has some sculptural idea or a shape. These are guys who they analyzed thousands of data from little things like, let's look at the pedestrian movement for the last 20 years in this area, in this block. And we can see where people have been stepping, where people have been stopping throughout the last 10 years. Then we know where it makes sense to maybe put a structural element, where to put a point to stop, where to put a little cafe to have something. It's data analysis applied to where you're going to introduce volume, where you're going to introduce uses, where you're going to do a mix of stuff. This, OMA, cool dudes.
So OMA, for the people who don't know, stands for Office of Metropolitan Architecture. This was the first name given by Rem Koolhaas and his partner back in the days, I don't remember. He is famous for writing this first book, Delirious New York, where he analyzes the different buildings that shapes Manhattan and how they're stepped to follow the regulations, and also this library has this weird shape because it's very explicit for the visitor to see exactly where to go from outside inside. The floors are kind of connected in this super edgy way. Rem Koolhaas, it's a very interesting figure for the modern architecture because in his office have started some of the star architects of our days. Some already passed, like Zaha Hadid, Bjorke Ingels work on this project, and then he started the office plot in Denmark, and then now he's the boss of BIG, Big. And Rem Koolhaas, it's a super interesting figure. I can suggest to all the people who don't know, there is a movie called Rem, which was directed by his son. It's a sort of a documentary. I think he is the Rem itself. His parents were diplomats. He first studied journalism, so he was from a rich family.
Didn't know that.
He did porn movies. He didn't. He was not the actor. I think he directed.
Makes sense.
Porn movies. It's a very, very Dutch way to go. And then at some point he decided he wanted to do architecture. He went to study in the AA in London. This is the biggest school of architecture, the most important one in the world, maybe. And then he was a teaching professor there for a while. He taught, as I said, Zaha, Hadid and other important architects in that school. And in his office, the work conditions are, at least I don't know, maybe better, but very harsh. So because diamonds come under pressure. But this is very common in the world of architecture. And yeah, very interesting character. He's now over, 80 years, I think.
Billion, yeah. I would say for young architects working in an office like OMA, Zaha did, it is true that working conditions on this sort of star architect offices are usually crap, but it is a very good place to get your teeth cut for the first time. Like, you learn a lot in those places. So yes, you're probably going to be exploited there for a while, but it's still recommendable. It's a tricky thing, I know, because people think, hey, I have my degree, I want to start earning money, I want to develop a career. I would still recommend it to give it a go in these places. But yeah, it's not going to be easy. And the competition is insane.
I tried, but then I saw what was the salary, and I was like, okay, what the fuck? I'm making much more money by working part-time in a German office. And I think that this is something that is becoming worse and worse. Or maybe it was always this way, I don't know. But architecture is becoming more and more elitarian, because you only do make great money if you have your own office. In order to have your own office, you have to have great network of people with a lot of money, because construction, it's always more and more expensive. And you have to be able to afford this couple of years where you just have to suck it up at some place like OMA or another star architect. And they have also some of these very weird contract clauses in their years. Like, for example, I've heard some offices put you a clause that for the 10 years after you leave the office, you cannot work for common clients. They put a clause on your contract which says everything you do while working with us, despite if it's off work, maybe you do your projects on the side, the intellectual property belongs to the office. So it's a fucking shit show. They do great buildings, but the way they're done, I cannot agree 100%.
Yeah, the execution, a bit cold sometimes. I'll tell you one thing though. I sent an application to this office, I think 10, 12 years ago. And it's embarrassing because I totally fucked up the application. And when you're filling up how many languages you are speaking, which ones you're fluent, which ones, the basics, don't ask me how, but I made some mistake and I put that I speak Afrikaans. Afrikaans is a variation of Dutch that they speak in South Africa. And I sent the application saying I speak Afrikaans. They actually answered me with a follow-up email that they would like to at some point do a meeting. I never answered. I got embarrassed because I thought, these guys think I speak Afrikaans. I have no idea about Afrikaans. I never answered. I was embarrassed. I'm going to say I was in my, I was 20-something years old. I was still a student, so I freaked out and I never answered. Who knows what would have happened if I joined the meeting, but yeah.
I never got an answer, but I was about to apply, as I said, and then I saw the salary, and then I was like, fuck this shit.
Okay.
Anyways, what's next?
Next, we're going to a building, which is not necessarily a building to live in. It's a bridge.
Which one?
The Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco.
This one I love.
This is number 7.
Number 7. I don't remember the name of the guy who engineered it, but it's a crazy engineering. Let me check just the name. It's, of course, one of the most iconic bridges in the States because it's super famous. Anyways, the guy, it's a German engineer. What else, if not a German engineer? His name was let me check. Joseph Strauss. So I guess Joseph Strauss, most likely. So why they needed these bridges? Because it's in the Bay Area. We know it's very fragmented. So connecting The different lanes meant faster movement of people, of goods. And exactly this is what I was saying, that bridge represents not only an infrastructure, but represents a certain period of California in which was growing fast, speed was needed, movement of people. And one thing that it's very particular of the West Coast compared to the East Coast is that the East Coast was the first part of the United States to be developed. And that's why it looks more European. That's why New York, it's probably the most European city of the United States, where you move around, walking around, taking the underground, while California was the Wild Wild West. And they developed the city of LA and San Francisco and everything after the car was invented. So everything is planned with these super huge distances because the car was already there. So they needed this bridge because also transporting stuff by ship was, of course, expensive, but also dangerous sometimes because the currents of the Bay Area are not so safe. So they decided to do this suspended bridge with these two columns. It was crazy because the two shores are too far away, so they couldn't build the two columns on the shore. They had to build both of them are in water, but one is more in deep water. And they used these divers to first build like the protecting wall.
To empty the water?
To empty the water. Then they had this protective sort of cave in which they could go down. And then they filled everything. After they built the wall, they had to manually dig until they find bedrock. They refilled everything with, with concrete.
Concrete core.
And then the guy, Strauss, invented a particular section of the steel column that was super easy to assemble while going up. And they would plate it with this element so it looks Art Nouveau. And after that, they erected the two columns and they started doing the ropes. If you look at the metal ropes, they look like a single section of a rope, but they're not. They're like, I think, several thousand smaller cables out of metal, which were spanned first separately, then they were rolled, and while rolling them, they would wrap them around this huge metal section, and then it was finished the structure. They had like walkable bridges for the workers. They started hanging the cables because it's a suspended bridge. They did the section, it's out of metal because joining metal to concrete doesn't work always very well. And on this steel structure, they had to pour the pavement for the cars. He started already with 27 meter width because they thought that in the future there will be more cars, more movement. Mm-hmm. And one particular thing that people this is again crazy shit because it was built in the beginning of the 20th century or end of 19th century. I don't remember exactly the date. But this is a mega project, and in these conditions, the materials, of course, react to temperature, and they have to be able to expand and contract depending on if it's warm or cold. So they have to also separate the sections of the bridge in particular distances, and then when you drive on the top of the bridge, there are these fingers. These steel fingers that you drive over with your car, and you feel them, and they can expand up to 1 meter, which is
brutal. 3 feet.
3 feet, yeah. And then also there are some invisible connections in between the asphalt because every 15 meters there are other
Another section.
Another section. 15 meters.
Amazing
It's 30 feet.
Yeah. No, a bit more. 45.
45 feet. So this was crazy engineering again. This guy Strauss did it all by hand, calculations, workers, very brave workers, cause divers and all the shit. One super interesting thing is that financing this bridge was not easy, but they managed. And they financed it, of course, was partly publicly built and stuff like this. But there was one guy, which is Italian. Let me check his name. I know his story. So, blah, blah, blah. I want to know the finance. Anyways, he is the founder of the Bank of America, which in the beginning, the Bank of America was called Bank of Italy, not of America.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. God damn. What was his name? Something with G, was it? Anyways, in California, we all know that California, it's this place which has a lot of earthquakes and stuff, which are, they have also this 200 years ago in California or something like that. There is always, every around 200 years, this huge, massive earthquake in the middle of the ocean. And there's a huge fucking tsunami that hits California and Japan. Last time, there was nobody in California to document it, but there was somebody in Japan. So what they know is that soon there will be another one of these huge, big
So there's a fault line in California called the San Andreas Fault.
Exactly.
And this is creating a tension between the tectonic plates. And at some point, it's going to go boom. Now, they know this is coming, so in principle, most buildings are up to code, and if they're built up to code, they should be able to hold it. But we know how life is. So we know at some point somebody will screw up, and not all buildings will be up to code. Let's see what happens. The Golden Gate Bridge, I mean, it's an icon. There's a billion pictures of it. My understanding is that there's a dark element to it, that there is also a place where people go to, let's say, jump. And there are and so apparently the jump from there, it's almost certain death. So it has become kind of a place. Don't do that. I don't know. We cannot say much.
I mean, every bridge is like this. But I found it, finally. The guy who helped financing the bridge, it's this guy called Amedeo Giannini, who is the child of two Italian immigrants who moved to California during the gold rush years, because it was the gold rush, you know. California is also where there is a lot of gold. And his parents originated from Genoa. Genoa is the place where there were the first bankers of the world. Italy is the first country that invented the bank. The bank, it's called the bank because they literally have like a table, and sailors could come back from their journey, and they could leave something of value in the bank in change of money, and they could retake that something back for a little more money. And these bankers made a shit ton. But this guy went in, I mean, he was born in America, but of Italian immigrants, started his own bank, Bank of Italy. What was the peculiarity of Bank of Italy? He was the first guy that decided to serve the workers, not only the rich people, but the workers. Mm-hmm. And during one of these motherfucking earthquakes, back in the days, was not so uncommon to have a huge fire. And a fire in San Jose, in San Francisco, where he was based, burned for days and days and days because it was super hard to turn it off. Also water, California, not a great place.
Mm-hmm. Bit dry.
So many banks couldn't open their safes because of the heat. They knew if they open the safes, the oxygen will get in and everything is going to burn. But this guy,
paper in the end. Yeah.
During he managed to save the vault of his bank, hitting it in the on his cart with trash. So because back in the days also you had a lot of bandits that would. So he moved it to another city where there is no fire and started giving loans and made a shit ton of money. and he became the founder of the Bank of America. And this is
and then the bridge.
They were the one who gave a loan for the bridge, for the financing the bridge. So it's, again, you can see the greatness of mixing this different culture. You get the Italian banker, you put the German engineer, and you're good to go.
You would say that the marriage of Germans and Italians often goes very, very well, right?
Yeah, in Italy we say Italians respect Germans, but they don't love them. And Germans love Italians, but they don't respect them.
That works. That works.
But sometimes marriage doesn't go so well, like Second World War.
There's hiccups, let's call it.
But at least Italians are smart enough to divorce before the disaster.
Before the shit hits
They're
the
like,
fan.
no, we didn't want to be with them. No.
He promised me, he took advantage of me, and now, yeah.
I was so unsure about myself.
Exactly. So, next one. Next building on our list. Number 6, we're going Louis Kahn here. So, the Salk Institute from Louis Kahn, research facility in the US. I could put on this list also the Phillips Exeter Academy from Louis Kahn. Louis Kahn, another character. We mentioned Frank Lloyd Wright already. Louis Kahn is a similar dude, super charismatic, had wives and children everywhere. I don't know these guys, how they do it, because the idea of having a double life with another family, with kids, it feels exhausting. The job of the architect is already exhausting. Combine that with having several families,
They didn't have social media, and they didn't have Tinder, so...
Okay, and there's no mobile phone, so it's not like the wife can catch you with your other mobile phone. I don't know.
There is this guy in the Premier League who was Kyle Walker. He's a soccer player, who had double family like Kahn. I wonder where the fuck did one of the family lives, because this guy plays for the most famous team in the world.
Honey, I'm in Japan today. I don't know. But anyway, the buildings itself. So I'm a big Kahn guy because I think, geometrically speaking, the Salk Institute, it's, first of all, there's a lot of thought around it that there's this little pond lake which is orientated with the sun, that at some point you see the sun perfectly aligned with the lake. This guy's thinking way beyond. Now, when you're in university, you often ask some dumb questions, which, they're not dumb, but you need to learn this thing, which is, I would ask stuff like, so when you design a building, do you decide the outside look and then you think about the distribution in the inside, or do you just do inside distribution and that brings out the shape outside? Kahn is a master at this, that he can create geometrical elements, geometrical forms that from the outside looks very impressive, but the experience, the usability from the inside works very well. There's this balance that he does between geometry from the outside, geometry from the inside. You can see that the guy has been trial and error a billion times until he decides a bit of the inside, look at the effect of the outside. A bit of the outside, look at the effect of the inside. This game, back and forth. And he always brings these super cool geometries with these super cool buildings, the Salk Institute, again. He has really, really cool stuff in Bangladesh, but we're focusing US today. So, Salk Institute from Louis Kahn, top notch.
He has also these amazing houses that he has designed in the US, super nicely looking, with the great use of stone, of wood, nice window opening, super cozy looking. Also, some of his office buildings, super intelligently designed, because he integrates the structure and the ventilation in the same level. This guy is top notch, and also top notch with ladies, I guess. He was getting laid a lot.
Yeah, I think 3 wives, 3 kids, officially. Who knows what's outside of that? But
I don't know how these motherfuckers dealt with STD.
Well, it was another time. No, who knows? Right?
But he died in the Grand Central, I think, in New York. His death was under super fucking weird circumstances, because he was in the station. He went to call somebody, because back in the days, public phones or something. he starts feeling bad. He told something, no, I think they just found him dead in the station, and the two families met at the funeral.
So the two wives found him at the funeral. I'm here to visit my husband. I'm here to visit my husband.
Yeah. The fucking
awkward.
Way. Can you imagine? And also probably there was a bunch of problems with the how do you say inheritance of the. I mean, he must have had money.
I bet he spent it all on all his wives around. I don't know.
I don't know if they were in two different cities.
But we're going to try not to judge the character of the person. We're judging the work and the quality of the architecture.
No, let's judge the person. I told you.
You're right. Fuck. Nah, I mean, this guy's awesome, I have to say.
Awesome architect, not so awesome to marry. Not a husband material.
Exactly. We're going to go to the next one. Number 5. Only one architect in our list gets 2 spots. And it's, again, my boy, Frank Lloyd Wright. Every architect knows this building. It's the falling water.
Most likely not every architect. I mean, also a lot of people that are not architects, because it's probably the most spectacular house ever built, because the waterfall, I think the waterfall is even mainly man-made. It's not a real waterfall. They did it to... Yeah,
they diverted a river. So it is sort of natural, but there's a diverted river that flows through there and falls down. We should say something about these buildings, and they're iconic. They're amazing. I love them. I can imagine living there. It's kind of a nightmare, because my understanding is that these buildings, they have a lot of leaking problems, waterproofing problems, because they are designed in a time where material science, they are starting to get on top of it, but it's still a work in progress.
I don't think so. I agree to disagree, because think about the Romans. They built shit that was completely different, but they didn't have any water problem. I think that nowadays we have all these water problems because we do thermal insulation. And once you start put thermal insulation, it's more ecological, but the house doesn't breathe, doesn't have all these unnatural materials. Meanwhile, these guys probably use something that naturally was impermeable. Probably the biggest problem is the sound of the water constantly around your house.
You want to pee all the time, probably. No, but there's a big factor here. It's sort of modern concept. It's more than 100 years old by now. But it's the flat roof concept. The Romans, in the old times, roofs are always angled. They always have tiles. Tiles are not the word. It's not the word, but you get what I mean. Whereas all these houses, they use flat roofs. Flat roofs have to be insulated with insulating materials like asphalt or plastic covers and elements like this. So the flat roof, awesome for architects, but it creates a challenge to waterproofing, because you have a place where water flows out, but at a rate which is quite slow. With a slanted angular roof, you're throwing the water away really quickly. Not these ones.
But I think
still, I would live in the falling water. As much as I'm complaining, it's an awesome, awesome place. The materials, how the place blends with the surroundings, but it's not invisible. You see it. You want to be there, really.
But I don't know about the flat roof, because I think in the Mediterranean area, like Greece or Morocco, they did have flat roofs, because they don't have that much rain, or they just have sun, so they use their roofs.
But in Pennsylvania, they have rain a lot.
And in the time of Frank Lloyd Wright, there were basically 3 main masters of architecture that were revolutionary for the time. They created a new style. One was him, the other one was Le Corbusier, and one was Mies van der Rohe. And I happened to read this super cool book that unfortunately is only in Italian, with all the interviews and all the things that Mies van der Rohe said. So there was one interview where they asked him about Frank Lloyd Wright. And his answer, this guy was super smart, German guy, who moved to Chicago after the Nazi occupying the country, because he was not very agreeable with them. And they asked him, what do you think about Frank as an architect? And he was like, look.
Careful now.
No, he was awesome. He gave the spot on answer. He said, like, look, me and Le Corbusier, we are trying to create a system. We are good in creating a new system that can be replicable by other architects. Because Le Corbusier was the guy who invented modern architecture, modernism, with his bad consequences in the end, which is this, so partly bad consequences, aesthetically speaking, good consequences because everybody have a roof, especially in the fucking Soviet Union, Eastern Bloc. They created the system which industrializing production of ready elements to build whatever buildings they wanted. So the house as a machine, he created these 5 points of architecture and stuff like that. Mies van der Rohe used some of these principles, like what was so revolutionary about the principles from Le Corbusier were basically the columns, the pilotis, which allow you to have a facade which is out of glass. And Mies van der Rohe invented the curtain wall, which is what people nowadays see on modern skyscrapers, this whole...
Almost every building that has a glass facade has variations, because it has evolved, of the curtain wall system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he said, we do this. This guy, Frank Lloyd Wright, he's a genius. You cannot repeat what he's doing. He has the most amazing sensitivity about inserting the project in the site. So he says he is a master, but it's not possible. You cannot aspire to be him because it's his own talent.
Yeah. These guys are creating systems. Frank Lloyd Wright is more his talent creating an amazing thing. That's fair. Mies, awesome dude. If I'm being a bit of a prick now, I would say the problem with Mies is that he designed systems for a time where they believed that energy was something infinite. Resources, you can always burn petrol, gas, energy. So we can go later into this topic, but the systems of Mies, even though they are super aesthetically beautiful, practical, pretty relatively easy to implement, from the perspective of energy insulation, like we have, it's a modern concept, I will say, they are horrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's true. But what for me was amazing is that was the last moment in history of architecture where we did something new, because architecture is probably the most fixed technology. Like you cannot invent that much. Like there is gravity, there is certain rules you have to follow. But this guy, he and Le Corbusier sort of reinvented something that was not made until then, to use concrete, to have this maybe light-looking building, to have more light inside the building also, because you have the possibility to put all these windows. So I respect that.
Awesome, dude. Yeah, Corbusier. One day we'll talk about Corbusier because he has associations to certain...
To what?
Weird ideologies.
He's a commie guy, no?
I think the opposite.
No?
More an Adolf type of
really?
Guy. Not a huge fan, but his mentality was a bit on that direction.
He's a French guy. He's a weirdo.
French Swiss, something like that. Yeah, but I mean, the dude is amazing. Like, you know, I'll tell you, we have Le Corbusier has this famous chair called the chaise longue.
Yeah.
We had a professor in university who actually said, if I could have sex with an object, it would be with this one. He actually said that, a professor in university.
So, you guys have to know that Spanish and Italian culture are very close. The difference is that Italians have class and Spanish people are like fucking savages.
Yeah, we tend to go straight to the point.
Like they took our sensitivity to what to say in the right moment and they just dropped it into the toilet. What the fuck?
We tend to attack head on. That's our thing. That's the thing. So, next on the list, number 4, iconic building. Everybody knows it. If you don't know it, you've been living in a hole.
Everybody knows it.
Everybody knows it. It's New York also. The Empire State Building. Okay. This building is epic. It's not the first skyscraper, but it's quite early for the concept of skyscrapers. And here comes one of the most mind-boggling aspects. The Empire State Building was built in a year. 13 months, I think. Mm-hmm. That is astonishing for that size of a building. Nowadays, for a building 1/10 of the size, we would take 2.5 years. Now, how they did it, it's because obviously regulatory factors. Nowadays, there's way more regulation, way more safety, way more OSHA laws, rules. Back then, they would just put a guy and say, you go up there and put it together. I cannot imagine how many people died building that thing, but amazing. In 13 months, it was built. Of course, one of the main reasons is that the Empire State Building is built with a steel frame. One of the benefits of this is that you don't need to have guys putting concrete or putting bricks and mortar and bricks and more mortar. You have Lego pieces, and these Lego pieces are bolted together, and that way you can start...
Knitted together. They're knitted together,
yes,
which is slightly different.
Yes, not the same.
And they had this role of the catcher. You know about it?
What was it?
So the difference between a bolt and a knit is that the bolt is just screwed. The knit is pre-warmed, screwed, and then it's hammered on the other side. And then it's like sort of, it looks like...
almost like a weld.
Almost like a weld.
Yeah.
So to speed up the process, they would have a guy that would warm the bolt and then throw it at the other guy, which is like construction safety.
Jesus.
And this guy had sort of a funnel out of metal. He would catch it, take it to another guy that had this sort of, how do you say, like a...
pliers or
something like that. Put it, and then there is the guy hammering.
Smash it. All of this with a fall next to you of like 100 meters, that if you fall, you're dead. And I'm guessing maybe nothing or maybe a little bit of a rope to hold on. Also because it's a system of steel and the outer walls are made of stone, you can start building the stone cladding on the base while you're still building the top. You don't need to wait to build the whole structure and then the cladding. You can move along the same. Amazing thing. 13 months. I cannot imagine right now.
There are other amazing stuff they did in the building. First of all, they did some masonry to fix the windows. They're not in the same layer as the steel structure. They put like sort of beams and they cover right in front. So it's the first sort of suspended facade. One other method they used to build it so quickly is that as soon as they would finish one floor, while doing the next floor, there will be already people doing the facade. Once the facade is closed, people would do the interiors and they would move like this. The other thing is that they didn't have the same technology of today. So they would create a couple of platforms in between. And they would use a crane that would pick the beam from the ground level, elevated 30 floors, I think was the maximum. Then another crane was 30 floors above, big, and so on and so on. Another amazing feature of the building is that it goes smaller and smaller and smaller while you go up. Of course, this has benefits for statics while you go up, but this is the famous wedding cake buildings of New York, because you have to maintain a certain distance to the street while you go up to allow light and air to flow in the streets. This is why so many buildings steps back. And of course, the whole pillar at the top, it's itself a whole Art Nouveau.
It's amazing.
Artwork.
I'm still surprised that they put all this effort on that antenna piece thing on the top, because if you think about it, nobody's going to see that. The people walking on the street will not see it. Yeah, King Kong will see it when he goes up there, but maybe a guy in a helicopter will see it. But I think it's, and I like it, to be honest,
but
that
the
they
visitors,
put all this effort, they put all this attention to detail on a piece that nobody's going to see, for real.
The visitors will see it for sure. Super to mention also is that the Empire State Building, it's a representation of the Great Depression, because it was built right in the middle of the Great Depression with this fucking cool name, Empire State Building. And the investors who invested into building it decided that, it's it's more expensive. We're going to lose more not building it instead of building it. So they built it. And it has a little bit of a beef with the Chrysler Building, because the Chrysler Building was already completed, was the tallest building in the world for just 13 months, because these guys built the biggest, the tallest structure. Also with great use of the Otis elevators, which are this American company that makes elevators, because the elevator was the game changer for each skyscraper. And the skyscraper has had also like an accident similar to 9/11, because in the 50s, I think, a B-52 bomber by accident a bomber hit the building. Didn't collapse exactly because it's out of steel structure, out of a steel frame structure, which it's much more resist, because there were a lot of columns in this building.
The volume of structure.
While in the 9/11 in the Twin Towers, I don't know if you know, but they didn't have any pillars in between, because it was a core where you had the stair, and the facade was structural.
Yeah.
So once you destroy most of the out structure, you cannot really fix it.
Yes, I will say it now. I don't believe the Twin Tower thing was an inside job. I think from a structural perspective, you can explain that it would fall.
No, actually, I think that many people actually say that Bin Laden didn't think it's gonna collapse. And I guess that when they saw it collapse, they were like, okay, bro, we fucked up big time. Now they're gonna kill us anyways, but
I think they would have killed them anyway. But yeah. Empire State Building, guys. I should say the Chrysler Building, you could argue it's prettier. It looks like a bit slicker, the design. It's a bit cleaner. But the iconicness of the Empire State Building, I'm going to say it wins this one.
Yeah, we have to maybe mention that they both were built in this Art Nouveau, which is this combination of this modern style, but with a lot of decoration, with this floral, natural decoration. It's still like a combination of modern, like, because, for example, the Chrysler Building has the famous gargoyles,
Eagle shape.
Yeah, so it's this transition period between the new aesthetic of modernism and the old classicism, so to say.
I know it sounds like a silly example, but every superhero movie, the superhero stands in front of not the Empire State, but the eagles of the Chrysler Building because of this iconography. That's
Spider-Man.
Really impressive. I think Batman. I know Batman technically is not in New York.
It's in this
wink,
is the
wink, New York.
This is the lamest thing. Why didn't they call it New York?
Yeah,
it's so lame.
Doesn't make sense. So next building, number 3. Number 3 is again going to be a bridge. It's not a building per se. We're not leaving New York yet. We're staying in New York because we're going to the Brooklyn Bridge in New York.
Damn, I love bridges. I'm super fired up about bridges.
The Roman has spoken here.
I'm super fired up about bridges. Have you
Hanging Bridge?
The
19th century?
The first one.
Awesome.
Also German engineer.
The Germans are killing it here.
Let me check what was his name, because I'm super bad with names. People have to know this. But this guy, it's a family affair. So it's a crazy bridge built in 1860. Open 1883. So the first guy to design the motherfucking bridge was this guy, which was called, goddamn, help me here.
We have to think also the times of the year, 1860s, late 1860s, beginning, late 1880s, done. This is the times of the Civil War in the US. So you have to imagine people in horses shooting rifles, a lot of them shooting flintlock guns. Mm-hmm. It's just so you see this structure in the context of what's going on in the place, you can see some parts of the country, they live in the past. Whereas here they have this awesome hanging bridge. Amazing.
So this guy is German again. It's called Johann August Röbling.
Röbling.
But
yes.
of course, while he moved to the States in Pennsylvania, and it was called John Augustus Röbling, the American version. He went to Pennsylvania, I think, too. He was an engineer educated in, I think, Technical University of Berlin. When he moved to America, to the States, become a farmer. He met a German lady there, really ugly. I don't know, really ugly, horrible lady.
So he left and he said, I'm going to make bridges.
No. He didn't leave. He loved her his whole time. He was just into not so pretty ladies.
It's the 1800s. Nobody's pretty.
No, he went full blast farmer, connected with the nature. And then after a while, he was like, okay, this kind of sucks. Let me go back to experiment with my engineering skills. And he invented the metal rope, the first guy to invent the metal rope. Okay. And this was a fucking huge success because they needed ropes. And so this invention actually permitted him to build the bridge, the suspended bridge, because it's the first bridge with which they could use these metal super strong ropes. Again, New York, that back in the days, Manhattan basically was considered New York. All the others were considered boroughs of New York and separate cities.
Brooklyn, Queens.
In fact, Brooklyn was, I think, the 5th largest city of the United States or something like this. They were traveling again with boats, with
ferries
back and forth. Very strong water streams, sometimes dangerous, not the modern boats we have nowadays.
Well, modern boats. Have you seen the news?
Which one? Yeah, the one that fuck up ships now. Anyways, I think if a ship hits the Brooklyn Bridge is gonna stand.
You think it's gonna hold? Okay, Gehry has a lot of faith.
Well, these columns are made out of stone. They're like pure stone, old school. Again, they needed to build a protective wall around to dig. They first built a wooden structure. They suck up the water. Then people would go down this wooden structure and start...
Like the Romans, same style.
Yeah, and they would do it by hand until they find bedrock. The air down there was awful, 40 degrees Celsius, I think 100 Fahrenheit, something like that. Mm-hmm. Poor air, a lot of people dying, but they dig. They then started putting concrete on the stones. They did a little bit of concrete. They filled basically the room that was protected by the wood was filled with concrete. And the first guy, the Johann Röbling, one day while I was coming back from the construction site, the boat hit the sort of like the bank of the where he was supposed to hop off. He injured his foot, and he didn't want to get classic medical care because he was all this natural dude who worked on a farm. And he decided that he's just gonna cure his foot by putting in hot water.
Okay, and herbs. I don't know.
He died after 10 days of tetanus. And he then after that they needed to appoint a new engineer, and was his son, who was called Washington. Washington Röbling was the next dude. He fought in the Civil War. He was...
which side? I can imagine which
he
side.
served the Union Army.
Yeah.
So the Union
Can
Army...
you imagine back then? You hit your foot, you're like, it's all right. Then you're fucking dead in 10 days. And your son is, I will carry on my father's.
No, they told him. Well, his son was a very...
It's beneficial.
He was an engineer, but he wasn't so experienced.
Trained and experienced, this guy.
So they put him to work on the bridge. I don't know why the fuck he needed to go down with the workers. Don't ask me. They didn't have, I guess, offices, or maybe he had to direct the works. Anyways, because the problem of going all the way down the river and digging and going up was the decompression. You know, when you decompress too fast, you start feeling sick.
Yeah, depends.
And exactly. And they didn't know exactly this back in the days. He did this shit, felt very sick, and they thought he's not gonna make it. But he miraculously survives, but didn't have the physical power to carry on managing the work. So they gave him an apartment in Brooklyn from which he could see the construction site. But
Did they give him a bullhorn to scream, left?
No, something better. What do you guess it is? Who is the boss? The big boss of everything. Who is the boss?
Okay, the client here, we're talking about a public project. It's
Who is the real boss? It wasn't him, the real boss.
the banker in turn.
No. His wife.
Of course. I felt right into that one.
His wife took over, Emily Warren Roebling. She carried on. I mean, of course, she probably was discussing with him. And they completed the bridge after 20 years of working.
What's her name again? Emily Roebling.
Emily Warren Roebling.
Okay.
To Emily.
Yeah, awesome.
Faithful guys, this marking. We see, if you want, Germans are faithful guys. Exactly. You're safe. Anyways, they opened the bridge. She was the first one to cross the bridge. The guy, the Washington Roebling, didn't even have the power to walk there, and he died like a week after they opened the bridge.
Oh my God.
But in the beginning, nobody had seen something like this. The columns of the bridge were the tallest structure in New York. There were no skyscrapers back in the days. You had to pay a small fee to cross. I think a penny, 10 penny, $1. I don't know, something what was the currency of the time. And in the beginning, people were fucking skeptical about this bridge. There were a lot of conspiracy theories that the bridge is gonna fall down. So if any one of you have you been on the Brooklyn Bridge?
Yeah.
Well, the area where you can walk, it's out of wood, right? Mm-hmm. So one woman was crossing approximately a week or 2 weeks after the first days. She was crossing the bridge, and her, the heel of her shoe got stuck into a wooden plank. The wooden plank slightly broke, and she started screaming, "The bridge is collapsing." Okay. Which, what the fuck? Like,
it's a bit hysterical.
Fucking idiot.
Okay. But, yeah.
So people were like, fuck, it's collapsing. Started running.
Panicking. Yeah.
And at the exits of the bridge is where the melee happened, and bodies hit each other, and there were death all over the...
So there was a collapse of people, not of the bridge. The bridge held perfectly, but the people collapsed on each other because of panicking and hysterics. Jeez. And
one very funny story that actually I forgot to say about the other bridge we mentioned before, the Golden Gate. After 50 years of the opening of the Golden Gate, they decided to do a big celebration, and they decided to cross the bridge on foot. 3,000 or 5,000 people all together. They overloaded the bridge, and the pillars actually bent inwards. But then luckily it was not a breaking point, so it came back
elastic.
But it was like, damn.
I can imagine the weight of 5,000 people is not so much for a bridge like that, but the problem is concentration of the weight. If you put the weight of 5,000 people in one small area of the bridge, it creates an imbalance of tension, and this could create a bending. There
were images, the whole bridge was fucking full of people. I don't know I hope that nobody died there. But it was happening also in London a few years ago when they opened this Millennial Bridge. I don't know if you ever seen the images.
Yeah,
when they
Foster, I'm a fan.
And they the bridge started playing around. So yeah, Brooklyn Bridge, big fan, super cool stuff. When you go to New York, you cannot miss it. Cool plates, memorial plates of the people who built it. I don't know, man. This stuff makes me feel so regretting that I'm not American, you know?
Oh my God, Gehry.
I think this is why when Trump says make America great again, although he doesn't mean it in this way, he mean it in probably a racist way and stuff like that. But damn, America was doing great things. And it makes me super sad now. For example, they approved the Ukraine help. I don't know if you heard about this, 61 billion. That there are these whining Republicans saying, oh, you don't think about the border. You don't think about it. God damn, America, you're great. You're the greatest nation on earth still, by far. You can do both. And fucking Democrats just take control of the border, help Ukraine, just talk to each other a little bit of common sense.
I think this is politics, the whole border thing. I'm guessing there's a real problem, but I don't think this is nasty to say, but I don't think anybody wants to fix it. I think
nobody wants to fix it.
There's a political interest to keep that problem.
Yes,
but that's what's going on there.
But what makes me super angry is that some of these political influencers, pseudo podcasters, blah blah blah, say that if you don't help Ukraine, you're gonna fix the borders, while they are two different problems.
Yeah.
And the thing is that American people, by don't accepting they can do both, they kind of disrespect this time of America when they were used to build these huge infrastructural projects, be pioneers. And they were like, I don't know, back in the days, probably a European when landing in New York for the first time seeing this bridge would be like, what the fuck? Like, we don't have anything like this.
It would feel otherworldly. I think what Gehry is trying to say is, America, get your shit together.
Yeah, because it's like, sometimes people, I don't know, some people want to demoralize the country to say, we're not great anymore. We're not that great. No, guys, you're still super great. Just, you have to remember about this stuff. Maybe look a little bit more into your own history, despite it's not as long as, I don't know, European one. But it's full. It's a condensation of super great moments.
Cool moments, yeah.
Pioneering moments. There are so many more things that you have done. Winning 2 world wars. The Panama Canal also was built by Americans. A lot of the Hoover bands in Nevada. The crazy amount of shit they did. Don't whine and don't...
Get your act together. That's
exactly.
Big. You're mentioning epic stuff. We only have 2 epic stuff left. We're going to go to number 2. And anybody that isn't from New York is going to smack us in the face because we're going to stay in New York for the next one. Number 2 of the list, the Flatiron Building.
Yeah, man. Another one. Great.
Awesome stuff. Not the first, but one of the first ever skyscrapers in the world. The concept of tall buildings comes from a bit earlier, from Alder Sullivan.
In Chicago. Due to the Great Fire.
Exactly. It burned down. And what happened in the US is that all these train... companies, not companies, but there were these rich people who are related to the train business. They decided, hey, we're making steel profiles to make railways for trains. Why don't we use the same system to create steel profiles for buildings? Then we can create a system that is bonded together, like we said before, and create buildings that are put together a bit like Legos and can build up high. Anyway, Flatiron Building, again, it's a steel frame surrounded by a stone cladding. This building is awesome. The design looks like nothing before that one. But it was full of controversy because it was a mix of ignorance, superstition, and I would say dramatic journalist overblowing things. The shape of the building, it was thought that it would create massive wind currents. And there were crazy news stories that after the construction of the Flatiron building, there has been a wind speed of like 300 kilometers per hour, 250 miles per hour, and that a boy has been pushed out of a balcony and fell down and died, all because of this horrible building that makes the wind go faster through the streets. This is nonsense, obviously, but that's the point, that the building was so different from anything that had been built before there. That iconic element of it, that's what makes it so cool. I would say, I don't know, actually I'm ready to change my mind on this one. I don't think it's Art Nouveau. It's probably previous style. It's certainly not Baroque, but there's a certain sculptural element to it, almost like a church element to it, of the statues, the figures, the faces on it. Art Nouveau tends to reference nature a lot. This building, I don't see nature through it. I see an awesome structure in a corner shape, of course. That would make people panic because of the wind shapes. But yeah, iconic building. We're really into iconic buildings today.
I want to say what I like most and why the shape is weird and why this is another American icon in the architecture field. What I love about the skyscrapers and the history of skyscrapers, and this skyscraper is the pioneer of the city of skyscrapers that, yes, it's Chicago, but we all know that New York is like the
reference.
The where it got the skyscraper got real gay. The skyscraper in Chicago started after this fire and is the biggest symbol, physical symbol of capitalism. Because what is particular about real estate is you cannot move it around. It's limited amount of earth we have where you can build it on. And what Chicago entrepreneurs and real estate developers figured out is that now they have this new invention, the elevator, and they can make a lot of money by just building more in height than in horizontal expansion. And they can speculate on this super high valuation of terrains downtown Chicago. And this is why they built this awkward Flatiron building, which is called Flatiron because it looks like a little bit an iron for ironing, just a little flatter, taller. Because they had this weird shape of the
parcel, the ground
parcel,
in it. Yeah.
And they wanted to exploit as much as possible. And this is the beauty of New York, because these rules and this capitalism shape this most iconic skyline, most iconic city, and it's beautiful, man. Like it's a beautiful because of the entrepreneurship, of the money that were generated, of the technology that was deployed to make it happen, and of course that every new thing creates this sort of reaction of ignorance. If you think we live it every day nowadays, the 5G, the metaverse, the chemtrails, all this bullshit. Now a lot of the people that listen probably agree with these things. But for example, when they first discover how to fly with a balloon, they first put a dog and a cat on them to see if they're going to breathe. Or they didn't know if you build something very high, if you can breathe up there, which is ridiculous because we have mountains. But they didn't see it this way. They thought the air goes, like...
It's going to go thinner and it's going to choke that person in a moment.
So yeah, I think this is the beautiful thing. And now it has become all over the world. There are these skyscrapers. But I mean, I don't care how much high Dubai goes or how much high Saudi Arabia will go. The first is the first, Yeah. I'm going to tell you this. There is a super hot chick. What is nicer? To be the first one or just to be one of the guys who was with her?
So we're talking about the first boyfriend, the 37th boyfriend kind of thing. I mean, yeah, be the first to something.
So
matters.
Do you want to be the first one with maybe not such a big chunk, or be the 37 but 30 centimeters?
I see. Do you want to be the first one to reach Mount Everest or the number 155?
Without oxygen.
It's, both have merit, but yeah, there has to be a first one. And it's not just that it was the tallest building of the moment, but it was just epic and awesome in the US. Actually, yeah. We could move to number one.
Number one. What did you pick for number one?
Number one, they're going to kill us because we're still in New York.
New York is great, man.
Yeah. This is a building that starts from a tragedy. It's less a building, more, let's say, a place.
A symbol.
A symbol, we would say. It is the September 11 Memorial in New York City. Architects are Handel Architects.
Damn, man, you're breaking my heart, actually. Because everyone, I think, around the world who, even if you were happy, if you were a fucking moron terrorist, pro-terrorist guy, person around the world, you remember where you were during 9/11. Mm-hmm. Where were you during 9/11?
I was at home in Spain, and I do remember, because back then, my dad was in the Air Force. So the moment that happened, we got a call from my dad, says, I'm going to arrive late from the office today.
Ooh.
That's all. So it was a moment of silence and okay, and hang up and just turn on the TV, see what's up.
But did he tell you to turn up the TV or?
No, we knew because we had the TV on, and a few minutes after the first news comes, we get a call from my dad from work saying, I'm going to be a bit late today.
Did he reveal something else afterwards? Or
no, my dad was a very private individual. But
yeah. Years after? Never?
He was working in the NATO group in Spain, and he told, my dad doesn't share that much. He told us, we were discussing the situation.
I remember we were on the beach, because in September it's still good weather in Italy, and 11th of September was shortly before the school starts.
Yeah.
So we were the last few late days of vacation, summer vacation. I don't remember which day of the week it was, but I think it was a work day, because it was due to the victims of the attack. And back in the days, you had a cell phone, but the cell phone was only to call people. We would sit just on the beach, and it was about lunchtime. And in New York was morning.
Yeah.
And at some point, we were a big group of kids, family, friends, blah, blah, blah. We were next to the house of one friend of my family, and they said, okay, let's go back up to the apartment to have lunch. And we go back up to the apartment. I turn on the TV, and on every single channel, there is the Same going on.
Yeah.
And the moment we arrived, the second plane hit.
Because on the first hit, there's a lot of talk like
it's an accident.
It's an accident, but it's very difficult for this to be an accident. I mean, you really have to aim a plane to hit it. The moment the second hits, it's like, okay, we know it's not an accident.
And then they mentioned the Pentagon attack. They mentioned the plane that was shot down, which was aiming to the White House. And there was horrible things.
Not that I feel bad for any terrorist scum, but the guy that was assigned the White House, that was a difficult one. It's like, do I get the White House? I mean, that's the hardest one to hit.
Did you know that actually he didn't hit it not because of because they intercepted it? It's because of the passengers on the plane.
They rebelled, right? Yeah.
They rebelled because somebody managed to call.
Yeah.
They mentioned to the passengers, and a couple of passengers called their families and said, "We're not gonna make it. We know. So we're gonna sacrifice ourselves to save the lives of certain people."
I mean,
and only talking about it, I have goosebumps because I think, God damn, what a fucking... See, this is the real American people.
I think the guy who started that sort of revolution, he starts like let's rock and roll or something, or let's go, something like that. Because if you think about it, there's way more passengers than terrorists in the airplane. They can do it. But that first step, who's going to take it? Like, it's really, really hard. Like, we all want to think, yeah, I would stand up and fight. I'm not so sure about that. With the whole moment, what's going on, what's up here. But yeah, tragic. We can go back to architecture maybe and talk about the
that's the consequences of the memorial.
Yeah.
The site, of course, we're not going to cover all the conspiracy theories. Maybe when we approach 9/11 this year, maybe we can do a special live stream, maybe a special podcast about it. But yeah, after that, a lot of destruction, and American people not going to back down, not going to step down, not going to say, terrorists won. They said we're gonna rebuild, and we're gonna rebuild with respect for the losses, but taller, stronger, cooler.
There's obviously those two halos of light where the old towers were. I think that is an amazing idea to have the image of the towers there, have the ground zero, the shape, the lights. I think that is an amazing idea to have the towers sort of go back there, more as a soul of the tower, not really the tower itself. They could have rebuilt it just in the same way, where the same was. Like, look, we rebuilt it. Fuck you guys. Here, you throw it down, we rebuild it back. You will never win. But they went for that choice to make the light. It was a great choice. It's way more iconic. Like, you cannot get your eyes off it.
And also, have you ever been there?
No, I have not.
I've been a couple of years ago now. And the two fountains, the way the water falls down reminds of the sound that the towers made while falling. You have all the names engraved. That was shortly before the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 tragedy. There is a museum that also looks a little bit like a wreckage of the building, in which you enter and you can go downstairs. And then there are still some firefighter trucks and some stuff that are left. Looking the documentary, it's a tragic moment. The whole new complex, it has been a little bit troubled, because you can imagine it involves a lot of property, because the whole site belongs to the Port Authority. You have to put a lot of money to rebuild. Of course, they had some insurance money and stuff like that, but who's going to build it? Who's going to own it? Stuff like this. They built World Trade Center 7, which is the side building that collapsed, was quickly rebuilt because there the property was clear, the insurance money were clear, and then there were other sites that had to be compensated. There are many architects that have participated in the competition for the whole master plan. The one that they won was from the Jewish guy, goddamn, what is he called? Liebeskind, Daniel Liebeskind, who is American, German-American Jew. So he comes from here. And his master plan is where the towers were used to be. It's where now these two fountains memorials is, with these two fountains. The water goes into this bigger pool, and then the smaller pool kind of disappears down there. From the center of them, it comes the light. But then there are 4 new towers that act like the guardians of the memorial. So the symbolic is that you have these sort of towers that one is tinier, bigger, and then you have the biggest. They didn't build the third one. It's a very troubled project, because the problem is that they don't find tenants because of the cultural change and stuff like this, more home office. The area is not really residential, so building a residential so tall, it's a very troubled one.
I thought this was going in another direction, that people are a bit scared that it will become another target.
No, because they did the biggest,
the one
world that it's super tall. There were many discussions. It took a while before recreating the whole complex. A friend of ours, the Donald, at some point said, "Rebuild it as it was." Classic Donald move. He showed up at some press conference with a model of the two Twin Towers, said, "Rebuild it as it was great."
Just with the proper fire protection or whatever, I don't know.
Exactly. He was like, "Rebuild it the same, just modern," which it doesn't work exactly this way.
Definitely not.
So they did this super safe. The One World Trade Center is built by SOM, one of the biggest corporation in architecture in the States and in the world, and super safe with a lot of measurements, anti-plane stuff. But now I think the protocol of the US is as soon as we see a plane that is not going in the right direction,
they shoot it down.
They shoot it down as fuck.
I know this is bold because I don't know enough about it, but I don't think you can make a building airplane proof. It's I think what they have is probably policies and strategies, whereas, like you said, the moment an airplane gets off course, they send fighter jets.
They did the core, the interior core, where you have the staircase and the elevators, airplane proof. That you can do.
Okay, it's like a bunker then.
So basically, it's like a central bunker where you can go and flee, and the exterior thing, it's of course way more stable than the shape of the building itself. It's very stable, but it's a concept. It's also, we have to say that the One World Trade Center, first of all, had a bomb attack before the planes a few years before.
Oh, the World Trade Center, yeah, the biggest one,
and it didn't collapse. And the whole concept was to maximize again the floor area because there are no pillars.
Yeah,
which made it unstable for a plane hit.
Because usually that never happens. That's the thing. Like, it's almost ridiculous to make a building airplane proof. But I get it that they would do it for the One World because they're afraid it will become a target. But it's like, I don't know. Would you call Volkswagen and say, "We're going to make the new Volkswagen Golf tank proof"? It's ridiculous.
It's not the same because that's a massive production thing. So you can make one car that is tank proof, and this is like with a building. And they cannot allow that this building gets attacked again and stuff like this.
They probably have missiles on the roof or something. I don't know.
No, I think that the new protocols are completely different. And, it's back in the days, nobody expected this savagery to go with a plane. No, now they just do Boeings. They fall by themselves.
Yeah, they do it on their own. I came with a Boeing. I was
I'm scared, man.
And I flew back with the Boeing 737. It wasn't the MAX. And it's funny. Look, I'm not trying to say Boeings are shit, but
they are.
The tire ruptured. So when we boarded the airplane, then through the PA system, they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, dear passengers, one of the tires is ruptured and damaged. We need to change the tire. We're going to first empty the aircraft. It will take 40 minutes, no more than that, and then come back in the aircraft." I think it's kind of an unlucky moment. It's not really that. I doubt that Boeing airplanes are that bad. But yeah, I had a tire rupture in a Boeing airplane. And it wasn't the MAX, it was the previous one.
Which company? Which airline company?
Lufthansa.
Lufthansa. I have to fly with them to Rome. I didn't know they fucking fly Boeing. Damn, this.
They probably have a gigantic fleet.
I hope I get an Airbus.
You want an Airbus? I mean, we are too ignorant to have an opinion about this matter, though.
But yes and no, because there are now all these whistleblowers and stuff. But let's stick on the architecture today.
So we went to number 1.
Yeah,
9/11 Memorial. It has been 10 buildings. We're going to do a couple honorable mentions. I know, this could be a bit cowardly, but there's buildings that we carry in our hearts and we want to share them. So, honorable mention number 1. It's going to be 5. Number 1, your boy Mies van der Rohe.
Damn, yeah.
The IIT in Chicago, Illinois Institute of Technology in Chicago. This is full concept of a glass system with a steel frame system that you could apply in other buildings, not just in one. From an energy perspective, it's a catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
But fair enough. We're talking about a long time ago, before energy was a thing for buildings. But yeah, IIT, Chicago, glass, cool stuff.
Yeah.
Would you say it's the precedent for the Berlin Neue Galerie? I think.
Yeah, and everything starts with the Barcelona pavilion that then evolves into this bigger scale. I like Mies van der Rohe because of his architectural contribution, but also because of his character. So I want to mention that he was the president of the Bauhaus, which was the School of Design and Architecture and Arts in Germany, next to Berlin, I think it was, close to Berlin, in Weimar. And there were a lot of artists of his era that were teaching there, and one of them was Kandinsky, which was renowned to be a little bit of a communist. So when the Nazi party came in power, the chief of the SS closed the school because they were thinking that in the school they were doing political, how do you say, they were politicizing maneuvers to teach the students about different political theories. So
which was probably right, but it's none of their fucking business. Yeah.
Yes, but Mies van der Rohe was a guy with two big bad balls. went to the boss of the SS in Berlin, knocked on his doors, and he said, "Bro, why are you closing the school?" He says, "Because you have these communist guys. We know you're politicizing the school. You're doing, maneuvering the students." And he says, Mies van der Rohe told him, "This is your desk, right? Do you like it?" And the guy was, "It's a desk." And Mies van der Rohe said, "For me, it's a fucking shit desk. I hate it. And all we do in this school is try to teach the students how to do great design and how to do a nice desks for people like you."
For you assholes. Yeah.
And this guy was convinced, allowed him to reopen the school. The next weekday, they reopened the school. The first day of the reopening, Mies van der Rohe goes with a bottle of champagne and says, "We are celebrating the closing of the school." He says, and everybody else, all the teachers were like, "What the fuck?" And he said, like, "Let's be honest, this is not going to last long. Let's close it on our terms. We're going to close it with a party." They closed the school. He hopped on a ship, went to Chicago, and never
is badass.
Never came back to Germany. I mean, I don't know if he never came back, but he definitely was not a supporter of the Nazi party. He moved to America, did his stuff there. So this is one of the reasons for which I have a lot of respect for Mies van der Rohe.
Cool dude. Yeah, cool dude.
So
that is an epic story. But I always thought Mies... Okay, I'm convinced. Because I always thought Mies was kind of a guy who would sell anything to anybody, like cool dude, but he would build. If the communists asked him to build, he would build. If the Nazis asked him to build, he would build. If anybody asked him to build, he would build. That was my idea of Mies, a great salesman in a way. But
I guess killing Jews and the ideology of the Nazi party was a red line for him.
That's his limit. I mean, we all have our limits. I can understand it.
But yeah, he was a cool guy. And this is why I like him a lot. And I like him a lot more than Le Corbusier, because Le Corbusier makes Bulgaria look like shit, basically. And as I said, Frank Lloyd Wright, genius.
Too elitist.
But I like... It's like Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. You can say Messi has bigger talent, more skilled, but I like Ronaldo. Because Ronaldo is something that is based on work, hard work, discipline, and you can achieve it. And people say, yeah, but Ronaldo will never be Messi. I say, but nobody's going to be Ronaldo, because how are you going to keep this discipline for such a long time? So I like these people that set up a path for the rest of the people in their, in their area of expertise. And you can follow them.
Cool Mies. We love him. I like him too. I'm more a Frank Lloyd Wright guy, but I respect your choice. Next honorable mention. We've done Mies. The next one is, yes, Frank Gehry's Walt Disney Concert Hall.
Oh, yeah.
This is this titanium, very organic shaped structure. There's
Los
a reason
Angeles.
why, to me, it's in Los Angeles, correct? To me, this doesn't go in the main list for one reason, and it's that I find it to be too analogous to the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao in Spain. It's also from Frank Gehry. And they are sort of the same building in a different scale, in a different format, but design concept is the same thing to me. And the one in Bilbao was done earlier, in the 90s, late 90s. That's why, even though it's awesome, to me it doesn't go on the list for that reason. I know I'm being kind of a prick now, but...
Well, if we can say something about Frank Gehry, probably he is one of the last American architecture figures around the globe that has made a big impact with big projects in Germany, in Czechoslovakia, in Bilbao. He completely changed the city of Bilbao with this museum.
Totally.
And he's so iconic, he was in The Simpsons.
Yeah, true. The Bilbao thing, dude, every city in Spain after that tried to copy that because they called it even the Guggenheim effect, whereas you introduced an element of great beauty and design, and it transforms the city. Bilbao used to be a very industrial city, kind of ugly in its own way, and it totally changed the city. Afterwards, Valencia, Sevilla, all these other cities tried to make this like amazing building. They hired famous architects, Calatrava and so on, to create these iconic pieces and change the city. It never worked the same way as Bilbao, which is why the Guggenheim in Bilbao, to me, gets top marks. If we ever do a top European, that one is going there. The Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles, it's too much of a replica. It's not exactly the same shape, I know. But conceptually, it's too much of the same thing. Awesome piece, though. That's why honorable mention.
Yeah, and did you see the episode with The Simpsons?
Yeah, he throws the paper away, right?
No, it's funny because actually the guys in Springfield hire him to design a museum for the city, and he decides to be the first normal museum he's gonna decide. So he does these cubes. So he's ready to present this model. And before he presents the model to the audience, the model falls down and gets all wrinkled.
Okay.
And everybody says like, yeah.
I thought it was, okay. I don't remember.
But I think he's more in one episode. I watched that one episode. What else we have on the honorable mentions?
So, honorable mentions, this is more internal for architects, I'm going to say. The 1111, so 1111 Lincoln Road Garage in Miami. This is from architects Herzog and deMeuron. We don't need to talk too long. I think this is a great concept for a garage parking, multi-parking house. It's super cool looking. It's different, that's for sure. Like, you imagine a multi-story parking garage, and it's usually kind of a boring looking thing.
A box.
More practical element than anything else. This one, they went above and beyond to create something that is different. There's a cleanness to the design. There's a transparency. They put huge distances between the floors so that you can see through the floors. This way you see what's behind it. And even though it's, I don't know how many tons of weight of concrete and steel, it actually looks a bit light to the eye because you can see through, you can see what's behind it. For any architecture students also that are doing any concept around mixing cars and architecture, I think this is a great reference.
There's one hotel here in Frankfurt where you can go with a car in an elevator and you really get to your room with your car. It's weird.
Is this so people go with their mistress all the way to the room? It feels
I guess.
like that.
I don't know. It's next to the airport.
I didn't know that. Okay, cool. So, I wanted to mention that one. We can jump to the next one. Next honorable mention, Zaha Hadid is getting one. It's the Broad Art Museum in Michigan from Zaha Hadid. This is a funny one because it's very geometrical. It's very straight lines, creating forms and geometries. Anybody who knows Zaha Hadid will think straight lines. Zaha Hadid? What? Is that a thing? This is before Zaha Hadid went kooky. Not really kooky, but she went more organic shapes. This kind of forms that are very blob-like.
Because she hired the right people.
Probably. But this is before that phase, but still awesome piece. How to work with volumes, how to work with a facade, how to work with small pieces building a bigger unit. It's like made of a lot of little pieces put together. I like this fine tuning of things. Renzo Piano is a bit like that. That's why I like him too.
He's a little bit of this high-tech movement. But to mention Zaha Hadid, she is an Iraqi architect that left the country because her family was politically involved before the revolution coming power of Saddam Hussein. Moves to London, loaded with cash, a lot of cash with her family. Studies in the AA together with Rem Koolhaas was her teacher, works for Rem Koolhaas for a couple of years, moved back to London, opens her studio because she was full of cash, and for 5 or 6 years she didn't have any commission. They called her paper architect. But to say how much money she had to keep up this passion. And then after that she got some projects. They thought her projects were unbuildable because exactly they're super weird. Hires this guy, Patrick Schumacher, a German dude. Of course, always a German dude that's involved. It's like a James Bond villain thing who makes this crazy-ass parametric stuff. And from there on is history.
You have to admire the balls on her, though. Like, I bet she's losing money like crazy. I know it's a woman.
She looked like, though. She has balls. Sorry, we're making fun of dead people here, but come on.
That is rough, but true. But she's losing cash by the millions, but she stuck to it. She could have bailed and do something
maybe she
else,
had some stream of income. Depends what she owned. If she owned some companies, and maybe she had, I don't know. But she was full of cash.
But yeah, you have to respect.
Stolen from the Iraqi people.
Oh my God. I thought it was stolen. Really? Okay, we'll see. I don't know. We're going to get sued the crap out of her.
Whoa, this is allegedly stolen. We don't know.
The Iraqis. Okay.
You're too careful, man. No, nobody watches to this podcast.
We're not putting it off. Okay.
It's not like we have millions of people watching.
Thank God. I'm betting you this will come back to bite us at some point, but that doesn't matter.
Well, don't worry. We're ready for that. We move on Rumble.
Yes, exactly. Cuba is waiting for us. Anyway. Last honorable mention. It's not... Well, it is a building, but it's not a building with a use. It's not an infrastructure element. It's more a monument. But the moment you can go inside of a place, it's a building. And you can go inside of this monument, let's call it.
Yeah.
The Statue of Liberty in New York.
You want to get into that lady, don't you?
Exactly. I want to get into the ropes of that lady.
Why? I mean, of course, most iconic symbol of, again, New York, America, especially back in the days when you were coming in America by ship, passing by the island of the Statue of Liberty with amazing symbolics. But why do you think it's a part of that? What made you?
I would say the iconography element is what brings us. Although we should say it's not really built in the US. I can say it's not, we cannot put the stamp made in America. It's built by the French and it was shipped by piece.
Amazing quality for a French built stuff.
Right? Amazing, really. Built by the French, designed in this sort of old Athenian Greek format and brought by ship into the United States. It's an icon. You could argue many things, like it's not our building because it doesn't have a use. It's more a thing you get into it and have the view, but we had to put it. I think it would work perfect as a lighthouse for boats. That's more me being practical. There's this famous building from ancient history called the Colossus of Rhodes.
Yeah, with the open legs.
Exactly. It's a dude with open legs and ships would go through it historically because we never saw it, actually. It was lost to time. this could be the Colossus of New York, the Statue of Liberty.
Now you remind me about one information I forgot to mention about Brooklyn Bridge. They needed to do it suspended because of the ships, and the height of the bridge is now actually the limit for every new military ship of the United States of America, because it has to go down under the clearance of every. It's some 1,000 feet. I don't know exactly the number.
That's cool.
Yeah, and also we didn't mention on the One World Trade Center, its height 1,773 feet, exactly like the year of the Declaration of Independence. Fucking awesome, man.
Really?
Americans are really good at this shit.
That's a little cool detail. So on that amazing detail, we're going to close it in. That was our top 10 buildings in the US with a couple honorable mentions.
Drop yours. Tell us which one you like, which one we should visit next.
We're happy to hear corrections. We probably made some mistakes. We're sort of improvising here, so we're happy to be corrected.
But we're better now with the tablet. Watch to this next episode that's gonna pop up here. Subscribe to the fucking channel. Follow the social media we have in the description. See you in the next one.
Good night.